Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Hattusa. Hattusa can be found in the heart of Turkey's Anatolia region, the old capital of the Hittites. It dates all the way back to the Bronze Age around the year 2000 BC. If you've never heard of the Hittites, here's a quick recap. This was an ancient civilization and a powerful empire that stretched from the Aegean Sea in what is now Greece all across Anatolia and into northern Syria. They were such a legendary people that until Hattusa was discovered in 1834, archaeologists believed it was a myth. But as we now know, this was one of the largest and most important cities of the ancient world. It was surrounded by a massive wall. The city was divided into districts and fortified with over 100 towers and 5 main gateways. These gateways were decorated with giant statues of lions and sphinxes. Archaeologists have estimated the population of Hattusa reached a maximum of about 50,000 people, which was a lot back in those days. They built dwellings of wood and mud and brick and erected massive temples to their pagan gods. The Assyrians had even established a trading post in Hattusa and set up an Assyrian part of the city. This was not only a major hub for the Hittites, but also an international metropolis with visitors from all over the ancient world. Alas, none of these ancient civilizations lasted forever. By 1200 BC, Hattusa and the Hittites were lost in the Bronze Age collapse. The city was gradually abandoned over several decades, and the empire disintegrated. The city remained empty until 800 BC, when the Phrygians moved in and made it their own. Number 9. McDermott's Castle. The mighty McDermott Castle in Ireland is quite a sight to behold. While it may get less attention than other sites like the Blarney Castle, for those who really want an interesting glimpse into history, as well as the opportunity to gaze upon a structure that really looks like it came out of a fairy tale, they visit McDermott Castle. What makes the castle unique is that it's built on an island. The castle sits in the middle of a lake, about a mile from the town of Boyle. The lake, called Lough Key, holds over 30 extremely small islands. It was the MacDermott dynasty that supposedly built the castle in the 12th century, but the history behind it is a little obscure. What we do know is that sometime around 1184, a bolt of lightning struck the castle on the island and caused it to burst into flames. Dozens of people died in the blaze, and several people drowned trying to swim ashore. The castle was rebuilt after the incident with the lightning. It then came under siege in 1235. Cormac MacDermott, the king of Moylurg, was forced to surrender to Richard More de Burgh. More de Burgh had besieged the island castle with catapults mounted to rafts and small ships. After the invasion of the island, the castle fell into disrepair. The MacDermotts lost all control of it in 1586, and it slowly became the ruin it is today. Number 8. The ancient city of Termessos. The ancient city of Termessos was founded by a group of Pamphylian tribes known as the Solimi. It was built near the top of the Taurus mountain range in Turkey, at an astounding height of over 3,000 feet above sea level. Construction began on a natural platform and gradually spread across the mountains until some parts of the city were over 4,500 feet tall. While the view may have been spectacular, there were some downsides to living on top of a mountain. For example, the only way to reach the city was to literally climb the mountain. But there were bonuses too. The fortified city was nestled within the mountains in such a way that attack was unthinkable. It was concealed by lush pine forests and endured for hundreds of years in peace. Today, it's one of the best preserved ancient cities anywhere in the country of Turkey. But we don't know the exact origins of the city. Legend says it was Bellerophon who founded Termessos, a monster slayer from Greek mythology who killed the evil Chimera. What we know from ancient texts is that the Solimi were the first people here. They were part of a cult dedicated to an Anatolian god who later came to be known as Zeus. Most of what we know about Termessos comes from much after its birth, when Alexander the Great pushed his way through the area in 333 BC. Alexander compared the city to an eagle's nest and ultimately failed to conquer it. This is the guy who defeated the Persians. Yet he could see how impossible it would be to march his army straight up a mountain and try to take a gigantic city hiding in the forest. But still, Termessos ended up being destroyed. Even though it escaped war and strife for centuries, avoiding ruin at the hands of Rome by allying with the empire, the city still crumbled. Over 150,000 people were displaced when an earthquake in the 5th century AD destroyed the aqueduct and cut off the water supply. Everybody went down the mountain, leaving the city to become a lost ruin. Number 7. The Kami Ruins. The Kami ruins are all that remain of a once great capital in southern Africa. I'm talking about the Kingdom of Butua, a group of people who built one of the greatest cities ancient Africa ever saw in what is now Zimbabwe. It was the capital for about 2 centuries, from between 1450 and 1644. Archaeologists believe the city was built right after the abandonment of yet another ancient city in the area, Great Zimbabwe. It was after Great Zimbabwe collapsed that the Kingdom of Butua first emerged. As they slowly grew in power, trading gold and cattle with civilizations as far away as Arabia and Portugal, they needed a stronghold for themselves. On a granite hilltop looking over the Kami River, they began building an enormous city that would last forever. And they succeeded. The complex had 7 main areas that were occupied by the local rulers, built above the rest of the city. In the open areas and valley beneath, there were clay houses for the subjects and peasants. In total, the site covered a whopping 266 acres. That made Kami one of the biggest urban centers in Africa at the time. It was around 1683 when Kami was finally destroyed beyond repair. The neighboring Rozwi people, led by Chengamire Dombo, were jealous of the wealth and power being amassed in Kami. So they invaded, killed everyone, and broke the city into pieces. And on that note, it's shout-out time! Wanted to give a big thank you to Patricia I and Azrael and Grandma. This might just be one of the cutest messages we've ever gotten. If you are new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. Number 6. Elephant Cave. Goa Gajah, also called Elephant Cave, is an interesting and important archaeological site in Bali, Indonesia, located just 10 minutes from Ubud. The first thing you might notice about Goa Gajah is that its entrance is through the mouth of what looks like a demon. The facade of the cave, the natural rock outside, was carved centuries ago to represent the Hindu earth god Boma. Although to some, this carving is meant to represent the witch Rangda from Balinese mythology. Rangda was a witch who was known for eating children. Historians can't agree on which deity is represented here. Either way, you have to enter the cave through a gaping mouth. Much of Elephant Cave remains unexplored to this very day. The last excavation took place in the 1950s, discovering relics from before the 11th century. Nobody has any clue when exactly the cave started being used by people, nor even when the carving showed up, but it was at least 1,000 years ago. Goa Gajah was first mentioned in literature in 1365 in a Javanese poem. Archaeologists believe it may have been used initially as a sanctuary for Hindu priests. These priests likely carved the cave themselves by hand, then used it as a temple. Would you dare enter the witch's mouth to explore this ancient cave? Or have you already? Let me know in the comments. Number 5. The Limes Arabicus. The Limes Arabicus wasn't exactly one single structure. It was more of a desert frontier, a line of defense at the edge of the Roman Empire to keep unwanted vermin out of their territory. At least that's the way the Romans would have thought of them. They built the Limes Arabicus along the border of the Roman province Arabia Petraea, separating Rome from Arabia. This was the furthest extent of Roman influence, at the edge of the desert in what is today Jordan on the Arabian Peninsula. It was the Nabatean kingdom who had the unfortunate luck of being the final civilization conquered by the Romans until they hit the desert. The Nabateans had been operating just fine out of their capital city of Petra as major traders until the Romans came along and squashed them. The Romans then built the Limes Arabicus as a way to control and survey the desert tribes beyond, making sure Rome maintained dominance in the region. Rome was so obsessed with holding on to what little part of Arabia they had that they began building new roads. These were to facilitate easier troop movement and the flow of commerce. This line of fortifications didn't do anything in the end. It was built up, and then troops were withdrawn in the first part of the 6th century. Rome was overrun in this part of the world by the Sasanians, and after the Muslim Arab conquest, the fortifications were all left to ruin. Number 4. Nineveh. Nineveh is located in modern Iraq, but it was once the greatest city in the world. It was known as Ninua, a great center of trading settled 8,000 years ago. Ancient people lived here from 6000 BC until 3000 BC, when it grew from a settlement to a religious center and metropolitan capital. People here worshipped the goddess Ishtar, although this changed as kings and dynasties came and went. What makes this city so special is just how many people ruled over it. 8,000 years ago, there was a small group of Neolithic people living in Nineveh. They were there for about 2,000 years until the Hatti showed up. the same people who built their capital at Hattusa. Once they were gone, the Akkadians took over. This was sometime around 2334 BC, when Sargon the Great conquered all of Mesopotamia and destroyed everyone in his way. An earthquake in the year 2260 BC destroyed the Temple of Ishtar, which was likely constructed by Sargon himself. The Amorites occupied Nineveh for a while, then their construction projects were demolished when the Assyrian king Shamashi-Adad I chased them from the region. King Hammurabi of Babylon took the city around 1750 BC. Shortly after, the Assyrians regained control. This went on until the Battle of Nineveh in 627 AD. That was when the Byzantine Empire took over the city and brought the region under their control. But 10 years later, when the Muslim conquest began, Nineveh was destroyed and never occupied again. Number 3. Ciudad Perdida. The only way to reach Ciudad Perdida, or the Lost City, is to hike for hours through the sweltering Colombian jungle and then climb 1,200 steps up the side of a mountain. This ancient city is almost impenetrable and remained hidden from the rest of the world in the forests of the Sierra Nevada up until the 1970s. It became one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever, like realizing there was a second Machu Picchu in plain sight that nobody had noticed. Speaking of Machu Picchu, Ciudad Perdida was built 650 years before, in 800 BC. It was home to a mysterious civilization of jungle dwellers, boasting around 8,000 inhabitants. What's truly fascinating is that it was built on a steep mountain ridge, roughly 1 mile above the ground below. And it wasn't like the ancient people just stacked up a bunch of rocks to build some stone hovels. They employed complex architectural knowledge. They built stone bridges linking various parts of the city, and even drainage systems to bring waste down the mountainside. No archaeologist has ever been able to confirm who lived here. The best guess is that it was the seat of power for the Tairona civilization. These people dominated the northern region of Colombia, but vanished around the time the Spaniards arrived in the 16th century. Number 2. A mysterious cave. A team of explorers from the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage recently visited an ancient cave near the small village of Narangar. The cave is a natural formation in the rock that was widened thousands of years ago by hand to create a cavern about 20 feet deep and 10 feet wide. Inside the cave, the researchers came upon strange inscriptions carved upon the walls. These inscriptions were of odd geometrical formations, animals, and strange human-like figures. And here's what makes the cave so fascinating. Researchers found tools dating back to the Stone Age inside, but have no idea who actually lived in the cave or how long human activity has been going on here. The cave was known only to the villagers living nearby. They say it was occupied by a hermit until 3 decades ago, when a landslide made it inaccessible. However, the artwork inside the cave and the stone tools suggest people lived inside it for thousands of years, back to prehistoric times. It was never part of any major settlement or city, but was probably just a cozy home for cave people to live in. It was then probably occupied by random hermits and Hindu holy men until the landslide made it too difficult to reach. Number 1. Katna. Katna was first occupied in the 3rd millennium BC, but quickly became a thriving city in ancient Mesopotamia. It was positioned on an important crossroad between the Mediterranean, where places like classical Greece and Egypt were thriving, and Mesopotamia. The city reached its peak during the Bronze Age thanks to facilitating trade between people like the Egyptians and the Mitanni. It was too important to be destroyed by any of the larger powers because of its neutrality. It was a massive trading hub where all different people could meet and prosper. But with time, Katna became its own local kingdom. By 2000 BC, it was the capital of a regional power slowly spreading through the southern Levant. It continued to grow until it was sacked by the Hittites in the 14th century BC. After it was conquered for the first time, its strategic position wasn't so strategic anymore. It found itself in the middle of battle after battle, being beaten down, resettled, and passed from one ruler to another. All that finally ended when the Assyrians bombarded the city in 720 BC, reducing what was once a proud, self-governing kingdom to a tiny village of herders. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!